and welcome to the Midwest Motoring Podcast, sponsored by Hagerty. My name is Matt Pesaconis, Regional Territory Manager for Hagerty out of the Columbus and for Cincinnati, and we have a really special podcast today. We are going to be talking about one of the products that not only have I gotten to use, but a lot of the clubs that I'm part of that get out and enjoy the drive get to use. But we're also going to be joined in digital studio anyways by two of my favorite people in the whole wide world. First is going to be my buddy, Jeff Jagish. He was just on the podcast talking about the bull market review, and he couldn't get enough. He wanted to come on back, so I invited him back, so we're going to have him on the podcast. And we're joined by a special guest, and he's been working on this product since 2002. He's traveled over 40 different countries. He's won, not one, but two different 25-hour sports car races. He's got a dual Italian citizenship and American citizenship. And, of course, he's driven on some of the most holy of grounds if you are a car enthusiast person. He's driven at Spa-Francorchamps, and he's driven at the Nürburgring. I am, of course, talking about Brian Ghidinelli. Brian, thank you so much for joining us on the Midwest Motoring Podcast. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Matt, Jeff, thanks for having me today.
Absolutely.
It's
happy to be here as well.
Man, I'm so excited for the two of you because Motorsport Reg is a lot of impact in the motorsports. Obviously, with its name, Motorsport Reg is just huge out there in the racing community. But as a listener, as you'll find out, there's a lot more going on to Motorsport Reg than just racing. So I'm so excited because not only is Hagerty sponsoring the Midwest Motoring Podcast, they're also helping us with opportunities such as this to talk to Brian, talk to Jeff. Brian, Jeff, again, thanks so much for joining me, guys. How's everyone going, or how is everyone doing today?
I'm doing great. Holiday season, had some holiday cookies today, so we're off to the right start.
I'm doing good as well. They haven't put any salt down on the roads yet here in Wisconsin, so if I still wanted to get a classic out, I could.
Oh, man. They just put out some beet juice down in Ohio for probably about a quarter of an inch worth of snow we're supposed to get tomorrow. So the effective driving season, unless you have a 4x4 or unless you don't really care about the underside of your car, is done in Ohio.
Okay. I have to interrupt. As a Californian, you have to tell me what beet juice is.
So beet juice is basically another form of like salt, but it's more environmentally friendly, and it works just like salt, but it's a liquid. So if you ever see out in the Midwest them spraying like juice onto the road, and you're like, why are they spraying liquid? It's just going to freeze. It's probably a form of a beet juice, which really helps lower the freezing temperature of the road and of the snow landing on top of it. So it's kind of like a salt spray, but I found out like that it was beet juice. I was like, well, who uses that? So it's not completely beets. It's not like they're using like thousands of tons of beets, because I know nobody eats beets. They're horrible. But it is a form of that where they've taken out all the components to spray. So it's kind of like a salt spray, less corrosive to cars. I'm sure they got tired of us yelling at them going, my car is literally falling apart. And they're like, stop driving a Yugo.
These are one of many things that I have great appreciation that you all are willing to tolerate.
I mean, I kind of got moved here, so unfortunately I could move out, but it's just a lot of work. So I guess I'll deal with the winters, but it is also very, very pretty, and we also get all four seasons where, Northern California, my sister just moved to Sacramento. You guys get mostly 4 seasons, but it's not really 4 seasons. But she used to live in LA, and I was born in LA, so like that, it was just, you had like, it was 70 degrees or it was 100 degrees. That's really the spread. Jeff, I don't know, I mean, you're in Wisconsin, so you get even more winter than I do.
Oh yeah, born and raised. I lived in Texas for 3.5 years, and it was odd to me growing up with the 4 seasons to really only have one. But mainly I'm back here just because of Road America.
I'm surprised you didn't stay for like COTA, but Road America is a really great track.
It's a fantastic facility. It really, you feel like you're going somewhere at Road America. The song like Over the Hills and Through the Woods to Grandmother's House You Go, like that is driving a lap of Road America.
I like that.
I had Jeff over to Ohio to visit to see Mid-Ohio, and I had to preface it to him. I was like, look, it's a great track. The track is fantastic. Everything around the track is either rural, farmland, trees. There's nothing here. And he's like, oh, that's not what I'm used to at Road America. I was like, yeah, I get it. Elkhart Lake, it's a great place. I get it.
And Elkhart Lake, maybe the best racing component of that is Siebken's, which is the bar downtown where all the racers have their old helmets and gloves and all kinds of stuff. It's a great memorabilia place you can go where all of the great racers have spent some time in that bar. And it's just, you go to the racetrack, then you go to the bar afterwards. It's a ton of fun.
Brian Ghidinelli, not only a great proprietor of Motorsport Reg, but also of all types of motorsport trivia. So if you have a trivia night, focus on Motorsport Reg, bring Brian. Brian knows what he's doing, that's for sure. So we're here today. I'm so happy that Brian could step away from his very busy schedule to talk about what in ever living heck is Motorsport Reg, because as a Haggerty guy, as a Miata guy, and as a racer, I'm very familiar with what Motorsport Reg is, but a lot of people don't know what the heck it is and how it can help them if they're a car enthusiast get out and enjoy driving a bit more. And I mean, that's kind of what our thing is, to help save driving, and so that's why Haggerty merged with Motorsport Reg. So Brian, what is Motorsport Reg?
Well, Motorsport Reg was really born out of my own frustrations. So this is kind of the build your own mousetrap to solve your own problem kind of situation. And for me, going back to 2001-ish timeframe, I had leased a new car, BMW, and in the glove box of that car, there was a brochure for the BMW Car Club of America. And I like to joke that, not many lives were positively changed by a brochure or a pamphlet, but in this case, there's a happy ending. And so that brochure said, hey, you can go on the racetrack with the BMW Club. And this was at Sonoma Raceway, Sears Point.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And that began a very slippery slope for what became my passion, my career, and now why I find myself at Haggerty today. But I think what I take away from that story is that I had no motorsports in my background. The extent of motorsports in my background was I'd gone to the mini golf place and driven the go-karts as a kid.
Okay.
And I don't think that qualifies me in any way more so than anybody else, right? So if I can kind of go from that background to getting involved, and both as an organizer and as a participant, then it proves that anybody can.
I mean, that really is a huge point of a benefit of Motorsport Reg, which is that anyone can get on Motorsport Reg and find either a club, an event, a drive, a social hour. Now, granted, 2020 might have been a damper to it, but at the same time, there are so many great things to be found on Motorsport Reg besides just racing. Now, racing's a big part of it, right? But there are so many other things that if you just like cars, you can get involved in so many great different groups. And because it's not associated with just one group, and it's just not one company who's running, who's saying, oh, it's only Porsches, or it's only BMWs, it's only Ferraris. Just about everybody's welcome, and there's just about any type of event that fits any type of need.
Yeah, we're like a perfect match for Haggerty. I mean, because Haggerty's all about saving driving. It's about enthusiasts. It's about putting your hands on the wheel. And I think that takes many different forms and many different disciplines. And so in 2019, Motorsport Reg helped organize 7,000 different events around North America.
7,000?
7,000.
Wow.
And although the name would suggest that it's a lot of racing, there's actually racing, where there's a timing and scoring and a winner and a loser and so forth. That's a minority of actually what's on the platform. There are about 15% of those events, or more than 1,000 last year, were a non-performance driving event. So these are things like social get-togethers, like you just described, Matt. They are cars and coffee, they're fun runs, they're tours, a lot of tech sessions, actually. So you'll see like a shop open up their garage and have people come in to learn, sometimes stuff like change your oil, sometimes more sophisticated things like learn how to use data acquisition or change your suspension.
Wow.
And so really wide variety of things that anyone who's an enthusiast, there's something on there. If you want to watch, if you want to volunteer and work, you want to drive, there's something in that 7,000 events that would suit just about anybody who loves cars.
That's amazing that like not only clubs, not only race series, not only organizations that are scheduling these things out in advance and timing, like you said, competitive series like the SCCA and things like that, but just a regular club is joining in to, or a regular shop rather, is joining to say, hey, we've got a tech session. We've got, maybe it's corner balancing, whether it's dynoing. Like, just get your car out and do a tech session early to get it right for the rest of the racing series. Like, that's a whole new aspect of Motorsport Reg that I even didn't know about. So I'm sure that there are plenty of things out there that are just waiting for people to get engaged with.
If you think about think about your average car guy or car girl. So they love their cars or their bikes or their go-karts, whatever their go fast addiction or interest might be. And they want to socialize with people who are like them. Right. And so they become an organizer at some point, oftentimes out of accident. There's the joke about whoever leaves the room while work is being assigned is the one that gets the work. And so you get these people who wind up being event organizers because they got voluntold when they left the room. But the reason why they do it is because they want to socialize and be around people who share their passion. And so when we talk about what we try to accomplish at Motorsport Reg for event organizers, we try to do three things. Like, this is the business side of what we do. We try to grow participation for those organizations so that more people come to their events. We try to help them automate the tasks that they have to do to run a safe and fun event. And we try to improve their accuracy. Back in the day when I started writing some software, everything was on a spreadsheet or a paper form and so forth, right? So lots of opportunities for mistakes. And because some forms of motorsport can be dangerous or hazardous, it's important that you cross those T's and dot those I's. So when we think about that, the objective of the organizer, there's only two things. And one is to spend time with your friends or people who you like or who share a common interest. And the other is to have your hands on the wheel or to be involved in the participation in some way. So if we're connecting those two dots, then we feel like we're being successful because that's enabling the people we support to live out their passion.
I mean, that's really such a huge thing, that people can get together and find groups of people that are like-minded, whether it be you have the same type of vehicle or you enjoy the same type of racing or the same type of motorsport. Get out and start engaging with similar people so you can then, like you said, get stuck in the room and be the last one out and get assigned the job, of organizing something like this. So I guess there's two parts of this, which is like, hey, get out and enjoy it. But at the same time, if you have to, how easy is it to utilize Motorsport Reg as a platform to schedule your next event, to organize your next group, or to start a tech session?
Well, before we talk about organizing, let's just break down what's actually on the platform, because I think that'll help people sort of open their eyes to what they could be doing first, right? Most people don't go from I'm interested in participating to just straight organizing, right? There's
That's true.
Maybe you should learn the ropes first.
Depends on how small the group is, right? Because if it's like, your Studebaker group, maybe you do. But if it's a BMW club, probably not.
Well, and I think people see these large national car clubs who are wonderful partners of ours, like the BMW club and the Porsche club and SCC and so forth, the Audi club, et cetera. Those are large, sophisticated organizations. But really, at least half, if not more so, of the clubs and the racetracks and the sanctioning bodies that use our software, they're independents.
Wow.
They're local folks who are, like, in every sense of the word, grassroots. And I mean that in the best way possible.
Yeah.
Right? Like, they are literally servicing their friends and family who want to do the same kind of things they want to do, like you said, Matt. So, like, at a high level, I think people have this vision in their head oftentimes of motorsport as what they see on TV. And so that's NASCAR and IndyCar and F1, right? Where you started go-karting as a 3-year-old. You were weaned on gear oil probably. You've been at the racetrack every day of your life, and your mom and dad have probably spent millions of dollars to get you into one of these seats at an F1 team. Well, that's not my background. It's also not most people's background, right? So what our platform and our event calendar really focuses on is this more participatory and grassroots kind of motorsport. So what we're talking about are things as simple as a 1-day car control clinic for teens in a parking lot.
Right.
So for example, we have a great partner, the Tire Rack Street Survival Program.
Oh, yeah.
If you have a teen or you know a teen, and everybody knows a teen, the number one cause of death for teens is driving accidents. And so this is a program. It's run by volunteers. It's, I think, $85. And teens come in the car they drive on a daily basis, and they go and they run some skills and exercises in a parking lot at like a stadium or a venue or something in your town.
Wow.
So wonderful, wonderful program that really does some real good. And it's staffed by people who are motorsports junkies. So like they've learned how to drive, they've learned to understeer and oversteer and things like that. And they're kind of giving back. And so that's on one end of the spectrum. Okay. $85 one day, it's for your kids. For somewhere between 25 and 50 bucks, you can take the car you drive to work every day and you go to what's called an autocross, which is driving around cones in a parking lot, one at a time. So not wheel to wheel. You drive against the clock. And so it is a race, but you're just driving one at a time. It requires a helmet, which you can usually borrow from the organization. And
not in 2020, but normally.
Well, sure. Yep. Normal times. So, $25 to $50, it takes a few hours of your Saturday or Sunday. It's usually in town or relatively nearby. Cause again, it's usually held in the parking lot of a stadium or something simple.
Right.
And there's no prerequisites. There's no race license. You don't have to have a medical. You don't have to have anything. You just basically show up. And in almost all circumstances, these groups have a novice mentor or someone who works with novices, so that if it's your first time, you have a good experience and you get to have some fun. And so like, it's that accessible, right? It doesn't have to be going to F1 because that's not going to be most of our lives, right? But there's these things that are very local, very regional, very accessible, very inexpensive, and don't require specialized experience.
You hit on two huge things, and I got to give a shout out to my fellow Ohioans, the Buckeye Miata Club, because they use Motorsport Reg, and all of our autocross this year was set up through Motorsport Reg, and they did utilize the speed waiver, I believe, and it was such an easy process, and like you said, fairly inexpensive. We went to the Circleville racetrack, which is a karting track, big enough for like one car, but it was at least enough of a racetrack that we could enjoy ourselves, get to know the track, get to know vehicle dynamics, which kind of brings me into, I'm going to get on a soapbox here about teen driving programs like you had mentioned. If you have a teen, I was a teen once, everybody was a teen once, and I also participated in a Skip Barber racing school as a teen. I can't tell you the level of knowledge I came away with from starting as like, oh, I know how to drive a car, to I'm out there doing handbrake turns in a race car and holding that turn and basically drifting for fun and understanding the control of a car far better, which then when you get onto the road and go, okay, I'm driving and all of a sudden I'm in bad weather, or it could be snow, or it could be just a normal situation, understanding how the car would react to any certain movement or hard turn or slamming on the brakes mid-turn, like whatever it may be. If you can do it on a racetrack where there's ample room and ample space to make a mistake and come away clean, and not do it on a dry, like a street where you may not have that margin of error, is just that expertise for those teens to get involved. So wherever you live, find a performance teen driving program. Here in Mid-Ohio, in Ohio, we have Mid-Ohio who does it. If you live in anywhere where I don't know if Skip Barber's still doing them, but like go to Motorsport Reg, search your zip code, because I know for a fact Motorsport Reg can go by zip code and tell you all of the events happening within a certain mile radius, which is crazy. Find one. Go do it. Have your team do it. Plus, if you do it with your son or daughter, it'll be a memory that they never forget, because I did it with my dad, and it is something that is ingrained in my head. I will never forget that great time. That's a bit of a soapbox over. Get out there and enjoy your car. But so talking about that a little bit is like, you not only can it be easy to find not just wheel-to-wheel racing or any type of crazy racing, but Motorsport Reg has a bunch of search functions that make it super easy to be like, I'm a Miata fan, or I just live in XYZ city. Where are things around me, right?
So if you go to the motorsportreg.com homepage, there is just a large search box. And so to your point exactly, like if you want to find people who love Miatas, type in Miata. If you go to the calendar, it will show you the events that are nearby, but you can check anywhere. Right now, if you're in the north, you might not be able to go out and do a lot of driving, but you can search for things going on in Florida, or Southern California or Texas. And going back to your comment a moment ago, Skip Barber does run teen clinics. The Tire X Street Survival is a great program, but lots of local car clubs too. So your BMW clubs and your PCAs and your Audi clubs and so forth, they also do that for adults. And I'll say, like, that's actually how I started. So before you could go on a track day for my local BMW club back in the day, you had to go through one of their adult car control clinics first. And those skills you build there really are life-saving skills.
Truly.
I mean, the number of times I avoided an accident on the freeway when the cars stacked up in front of me in the Bay Area, I can't even count. And I would say I ride a motorcycle, Ducati Monster.
Oh, do you really? Sorry, I'm a huge motorcycle guy. I told my wife when we had our son, like, I'd get rid of it. So now I'm just like, I got that itch for a motorcycle. So anytime somebody's like, I'm a motorcycle fan, oh, what do you got? What do you got? So you have a Monster?
I have a Monster.
Okay.
I see. I made the decision to not sell it when we had our kid, and that way, like, it's already here. It's got first right of refusal.
First.
So that bike, though, I mean, even riding the bike, I've never taken the bike on the track because honestly, I'm afraid that I would really like it. But driving it on the street, the skills I learned in the car control clinic and on the racetrack at like a track day, those skills transfer. You know, my eyes are up, they're looking far ahead. And that has also saved my bacon a bunch of times. So I'd say, like, again, if you're listening and you don't see yourself as a racer, you've got maybe some pedestrian street car that you don't think qualifies to do, you know, air quotes, motorsports with. I drive a diesel truck. Like, you can have fun in just about anything, but these car control clinics for adults, they're fantastic.
We had, there's a local group around here that is revitalizing a old SCCA hill climb event called the Bell Fountain Hill Climb Revival. Shout out to Kurt Niemeyer and all of the work that he's doing for that. But last year when I was there as a participant, just kind of helping out, being a grid marshal, we had a guy with I think it was an F350. Like, I don't know if it was a Super Duty or maybe a step above the F350, where it was basically a semi-truck with a pickup bed. He was doing races up the hill climb. So it doesn't matter what you got. If there's a race series and it can pass tech, it probably will be fine to get out and race. And unfortunately, I have raced my bikes. So, Brian, don't ever take it to the track, because what you'll find out is that you get tired of almost having accidents on the street. So you'll go to the racetrack and then you'll go, oh my gosh, I can race and I can go like 9 to 10 tenths on my bike and not worry about being killed by another. Like, because normally, and I do air quotes normally, most accidents that cause the injured to be the motorcycle operator is because of somebody else's mistake. A car pulling out, not seeing the bike, whatever it may be. I always attribute it to cars because motorcycles are so small and hard to see. If you're on a track at a motorcycle event, that's all that's there. It's hard to really say. Now, if you make a bad mistake and get injured, that's on you at a track. But if on the street, it could be anybody's fault. So it was far safer to be on the track that I found than being on the street, because I had way too many close calls on the street.
I love that, because, like, we talk about for cars, but bikes are the same way. All the traffic is going the same direction. Everyone is following basically the same rules. You have flags for control. Like, you know, when I ride my motorcycle on the street, you know, you look over in the cars, especially out here, we can split lanes. I don't know about where you two are, but we can ride between the cars, right?
Physically, we can. Legally,
okay,
that's a little bit of a different story.
Yeah, so legally we're allowed to, which is great for getting through gridlock traffic, but it is terrifying in the sense of what you see people doing in their cars, right? And it's all those stereotypes, right? It's people driving with their knees and eating or putting on makeup or reading a book. And so that part of me makes me nervous, and that's why I think the track would be attractive. But I'd say, I'm not sure what the percentage is, but we have a lot of motorcycle track days and race groups who are also on Motorsport Reg. And that includes actually all the way up to the level of Moto America, which is the top level pro motorcycle racing in the United States for road racing. And we also handle AMA Supercross. So if you've ever seen them jumping, you know, the doubles on TV with the fireworks going off, that's one of our customers as well. And so, you know, again, I want to stress the spectrum that there is between, you know, Joes like us and then, you know, whoever the pro racer is that's hot at the moment. Like, there's such a wide variety of things to do.
Yeah, and one thing I noticed too, being in the obviously in Wisconsin, and like we were talking about the salt on the roads and everything before, I even I went on Motorsport Reg today, and there's still a bunch of events going on around me. I mean, everything from go-karting to ice racing, which I didn't think was on there. And so that was one question I had for you, Brian. Like, what's the most interesting type of racing you've ever seen on Motorsport Reg?
Well, interesting is maybe in the eye of the beholder, right? Like as a Californian, I'll tell you the one that I wish I could participate in the most is actually up in your neck of the woods. The Audi Club up there runs a ice car control clinic and an ice autocross on frozen lakes in the wintertime. And, we are lucky to get to drive in the rain, let alone the snow. So I just know when the limits are lower, like on the ice, you can learn a lot and you can learn a lot faster. And so I've had some great opportunities to race in the rain, and you learn just an incredible amount. So to do that on the ice would be fantastic. We've had some like mini bike racing on the platform.
That's huge.
Yep. The guys, on these little like 50cc bikes.
It's so funny to watch. Like if you've ever YouTube, I highly recommend anyone out there go YouTube some mini bike racing series, because it's all those mini bikes that you remember from like early 2000s, like people being gifted. But at the same time, it's like you see full grown men my size, 5'8", 150 to 200 pounds on these mini bikes racing, putting their knees down, like full on like MotoGP. It is the best thing I've seen in 2020.
It should be set to carnival music, I think, whenever you see it.
I like too that you mentioned about, a big part of Motorsport Reg is really getting people into racing that might not have thought they could ever do it. And my dad, I think his first year ever racing was 1980. And the year before, he told his mom, my grandma, that he wanted to race cars. And her response was, well, your last name has to be Andretti to do that. And he's like, well, no, it doesn't. And I'm just going to do this. But, he clearly had a passion for it. But I could see that kind of intimidation. And so, kind of a two-part question for you. What's the easiest way to get behind the wheel of any motorsport related thing? And then on the organization side of things, do you have any statistics around event growth by an organization being involved with Motorsport Reg?
Yeah, great. Those are questions we get asked all the time, right? Because if you're the participant, you want to know, how do I get started? I think there's two kinds of people. There's people who have maybe always wanted to do this, and maybe they didn't know how. I think that was me a little bit, like doing the go-karts at the mini golf place. But, again, my name's not whatever, pick the name, Earnhardt maybe. And then the people who on the other side, like, well, how can this platform help? So if you want to get started, the easiest way, not to do the shameless plug thing here, but is to go to motorsportreg.com and just look at the calendar. Because even right now, we're recording in mid-December, lots and lots of events almost anywhere in North America. So there's something locally that you could do. And if it's not going on right now, there's going to be a club in your area who would be your gateway drug, if you will. Yeah. And you can reach out to those people. You can become a member. You could go to I'm sure they're going to be like virtual holiday parties this year. They are doing a lot of virtual events in general. So like Zoom calls where you can get a tech session or an interview with maybe a racer or someone else knowledgeable that can talk about. So there's ways to get involved right now, even if it's the wintertime, even if we're maybe stuck at home a little bit. And that's a way to like get your toe in the water. But I'd say the most important thing is like reach out and find someone locally in the scene, which the MSR website is kind of a gateway to that. Because for better or worse, we love introducing our friends to the sport, right? That's how almost everybody gets involved with it, which is a friend tells them about it. And that becomes what potentially could be a lifelong addiction / love affair with going fast or the noises or the smells or all the things that go along with driving in motorsport events.
I think they put something in race gas to make it addictive, because once you like really get the smell of race gas, it never leaves your brain. I don't know what it is about it, but you're absolutely right, because you can get anybody, your friend, your partner, your wife, your husband, involved in this so easily. And it becomes, like you said, Brian, an addiction. I got my friend Mike, and the co-host of this show, this year he was like, I got a Miata. What do we do? Like, where do we start? I go, well, let's start with Motorsport Reg. Let's go look, see what types of events you want to participate. Lo and behold, the Buckeye Miata Club had an autocross. I was like, dude, get out there and do an autocross, because we don't have cages in our Miatas right now. You don't have the equipment that might be necessary for a air quotes track day. Some will, right? But he's got a single hardtop. I was like, let's just go do a not very difficult, not scary, an easily accessible thing, and it was autocross. And they had it at a track, even though it wasn't like an actual road course, it was a karting track. And he's so enthralled with it now. He does far more than I do. And I'm like, he did 6 events this year, and I'm like, I only did like 3. So it becomes an addiction, and it becomes such a fun thing to get out and enjoy cars. So Motorsport Reg does a huge part to getting people out and enjoying not only their cars, but socializing. And in 2020, that's got to be hard, right?
Actually, so let's talk to Jeff's second question, which was like, how do organizations who use our software grow their participation? So people think that because of the lockdown orders and everything this year, that there were no events going on. And that's actually just not true. There was certainly a very large gap at the beginning of the year in the March, April, May timeframe. But since then, we've had more events and more registrations year over year than we did in 2019. And that's a little counterintuitive for folks because, well, hey, isn't everybody staying at home? Aren't there these shutdown orders and so forth? And the answer is yes, but most of these grassroots events, well, certainly events like Supercross had to make changes, pro football, pro baseball, like these large spectator events, NASCAR, they had to make changes. But these local grassroots events where there's somewhere between 30 and 100 people and they're outdoors, they can socially distance safely. There's no limitations on those events taking places. So those events have actually been going like gangbusters because people have not been able to do some of the other stuff they might want to do. So it's actually been, obviously lots of challenges in the world, but in terms of getting out and playing with your car, it's been a pretty good time for a lot of these organizations. So the way that MSR helps people find events to participate in, like the thing that I, as an attendee, wanted when I first started working on the software, that's exactly how we help these organizations find new participants. So you live in Wisconsin, you live in Ohio, you live in wherever. And when you come to the calendar, what you find is not just the PCA region in that area, but you also see other clubs in that area. And so what we're helping you find are opportunities that fit your interests, your budget, your schedule. And we have this email list that we send out once a month. It's got a list of upcoming events near your house for the next 90 days. So if you want to get a list of fun things to do with your car, if you just go to the motorsportreg.com homepage, scroll down to the very bottom, there's a little button that says sign into the newsletter. And we'll send that just once a month. It's got this list of events. And people use that as a way to find out like what's going to fit my particular interests and time and so forth. Because we all have lives, even during COVID, right? You've got work obligations, you've got family obligations, you've got other interests. And so the best way to find something to do is have lots of opportunities. And that's really what our calendar provides is like, here's a bunch of stuff going on around you. Pick the one that suits all those things for you. And so organizations get this bump from people who discover them. And then it's up to each organization to put on a great event, to provide a great experience, and to get people to come back for more. But that discovery element, the way that people can find about new organizations, new events, that is where we provide this sort of marketplace option for the clubs and the racetracks and the sanctioning bodies so they can gain new members, new participants, new workers, new whatever they might need.
Now, you guys also make it so easy. And we've talked about easy, and that's been kind of a theme with Motorsport Reg is like, how easy is it to get involved? How easy it is to find things? How easy it is to set up events? How easy is it to then also get people to sign waivers with Motorsport Reg?
Well, this year it's been more challenging, right?
Right.
Because we don't want to touch the same pen that everybody else has touched. So we, as a software business, if you will, our real goal, the objective of the overall unit is to streamline and improve the sport so that more people can participate, right? Like that's the overarching goal. And so Motorsport Reg is one major component of that because it brings the attendees and the organizers together so that they can actually have those events. But we have 2 other products and services that target different aspects of running motorsport events. One of them is our speed waiver service, which allows you to sign the liability waiver electronically on your phone. So you don't have to stand in line and you don't have to sign and touch the pen that everybody else has touched. So it's something that we had worked on for some period of time, but there had been a lot of resistance actually from insurance companies because they know the paper waiver It's a tried and true mechanism. It's been proven in court. They like it. It's safe, et cetera. But with COVID, all of a sudden everybody said, well, we need to find a way for these events to still happen and to be safer. So Speedwaiver is this cool little website you can go to when you're participating with a club that uses it. It sends a text message to your phone. You click a little link, you take a photo, you squiggle your signature on the screen with your finger, and then it gives you a credential. And that credential is kind of like your airplane boarding pass. So you have your airplane boarding pass on your phone, you scan it when you get to the event. We essentially give you something similar, and that's how you go and check in at the event. And then at the event, instead of signing the waiver in person, they would just simply hand you your wristband or lanyard or whatever's appropriate. But what's great about it is not just for COVID, it streamlines event day. And that's really important for our organizers, because the way you start off the event, which necessarily includes like checking in and getting registered and so forth on site, that sets the tone for the event. And so the more streamlined that is, the faster that is, it means you have time to do those two things you really care about, which is spend time with your friends or go drive, ride, work, etc.
Cool. I had one more, kind of a two-part question for you, more again on the organizer side. One, how many users per year does Motorsport Reg have, and what can you all take off of an organization's plate?
Oh, good one.
Or some bullet points.
Yeah, so a couple stats. So last year we had about 7,000 events. There were 365,000 registrations across the 7,000 events. So that's a lot of people participating.
That's huge.
And, I don't know exactly if it's all 50 states and all the Canadian provinces, but pretty much, right? It's pretty blanketed. For the organizers, it comes back to those three pillars, which is automate tasks. So anything they might have been doing manually before, if there's paper forms, if there's manual spreadsheets, if there are lists that people are creating, if someone is cutting and pasting a list of email addresses into their Outlook client to email their membership, like that's a place where we can help, right? So any of these manual processes that usually volunteers are undertaking, that's a place that we probably have some tooling that streamlines that. Another big thing is about improving accuracy. So I'll give you one example from racing. When you go to an actual wheel-to-wheel race on a racetrack, you have this little thing called a transponder. And this is an electronic device that is on your car. And every time you drive over the start-finish line, there's a little wire that's embedded in the asphalt. And this little electronic device sends a signal to that wire, which sends a signal up to a box in the timing and scoring tower, and it converts it into a lap time. And ultimately, it converts it into a grid, right? Like who's winning, who's losing. Well, that transponder number is like a 7 or 8 digit number. And you can imagine how well people remember that if you simply ask them to recall it over and over and over again, right? So one of the very simple benefits we offer on MSR is you have a garage of your cars. And when you put your cars in there, you put the transponder number in one time, and then it reuses that transponder number every single time. So as the attendee, it's great because you don't have to keep going out to your race car or whatever to get this number. It always remembers it for you, so it's faster. But for the organizer, it means that if they have an issue in an event where that transponder number is wrong, they can correct it one time, they update the database, and now that person's information is correct going forward. So it reduces the number of sort of ongoing issues and errors they might run into that prevent them from running a really streamlined, efficient event.
Awesome. Yeah, I know I run into that every time I use an organization that doesn't use Motorsport Reg, having to call my dad to see if he remembers the number or trying to find it somewhere. So I can relate.
So the third product that we offer, we mentioned Speedwaiver and MSR. We also have this live timing and race results app called Race Hero. And Race Hero plugs into that timing and scoring system I just described. So as all the cars are driving around the racetrack and their transponders are sending their lap times up to the software, we piggyback off that, and then we turn it into really fun visuals that you can see on your smartphone or your tablet. So this way, if you're at the track or you're at home, you can follow along and watch live timing just like you would for NASCAR or IndyCar on TV. Well, if that data is not correct, and I can tell you, having sat in the timing scoring tower many, many times, the number of cars that drive by with a transponder number of 11111111, like it's a pain for everybody. The driver doesn't get their lap times because they don't know who they are. It's not connected to their profile. They have to have the driver come talk to them afterwards to fix it. They have to reprint result sheets if they're doing that. Like, accuracy is really important. I mean, this should be sort of self-evident, but it really matters because, especially at a full racetrack facility, we have a great blog on how much it costs to rent a racetrack. If you search for how much it costs to rent a racetrack on Google, you'll find this blog that we wrote on the Motorsport Reg site. Most people don't realize it's between like $15,000 and $50,000 a day to rent a racetrack. Just the asphalt.
It's like, not cheap. It's not cheap.
Yeah, that's not corner workers, the flagging marshals. That's not the ambulance. That's not your insurance. That's not lunch. It's not water. It's none of that stuff. Just the asphalt at a facility like COTA, Circuit of the Americas in Austin, Texas, where the F1 race is, $50,000 per day. So if you're running a 3-day event there, you've got $150,000 of cost before you even set foot on the property. Well, it really matters that you make the most of your track time, that you run an efficient event. Because if you have to take 10 minutes off to sort out an issue, you can literally calculate the dollars that you're wasting by not having cars or bikes or go-karts, going around the racetrack. So efficiency is important, not just for financial reasons, but also because it impacts the customer experience. If you don't have a great customer experience, like any business, people don't come back. So that's why it's so critical to be really organized and efficient.
You see so many amazing organizations try to do like track days and stuff. And there's a reason why you really come up with like 4 or 5 that really do it is, like you said, ease of use, the fluidity of being able to bring people in, get them on the track, get them off the track, send out notifications. That whole architecture that you guys are building makes it so easy for really almost anyone to set up a track day and utilize it, get people involved, get people active, and then keep track of it all. Because like you said, one of the worst things I can think of is like you're at a track day and all of a sudden you hear, and you're like, what did they just say? Well, like you said, Race Hero or Motorsport Reg can send out mass like notifications and say, hey, Group 2, you're on the track in 15 minutes. Get ready. How awesome is that? And everyone's kind of glued to their phone right now at a track day because you're supposed to be separated. You're sitting in your car waiting for your next round. You're like, oh, I got a push notification. Cool.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've all seen the studies that people have their phones closer to them than their wallets. we can certainly debate whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, but let's just say it is the reality. And so, for example, Race Hero, push notifications. So the organizer can say a bunch of things. Hey, we're 15 minutes behind schedule. We're going to change the lunch break. Look out for the cop who is sitting on the highway outside the racetrack for when you leave today, like drive slow, right? There's a lot of really valuable ways to use that. We have an email campaign tool in MSR for communication with your members or your attendees, but we also have a text message system as well. So again, if you're at a racetrack somewhere and you need to say Group 2 is going to be delayed by whatever the time is, really easy way to get people the information in real time rather than use the PA, because I'm trying to think, like, have I ever been to a track where the PA works well? And I'm pretty sure the answer is no.
I've paid for sponsorship on PAs, and I'm like sitting at the track waiting to hear, and I'm like, I didn't hear it. And then they're like, no, we did it. Like, we did it at 1:30, we did it at 2, and you're like, you know what? Sure, I'm sure you did, because I can't prove one way or the other. It's horrible.
It's like the Peanuts, the Charlie Brown's teacher. Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but I think one of the features, it might be an upcoming feature, is too, if you're brand new to a track, say you've never been there, and they say, the driver's meeting is at the main pavilion, and you have no idea where that is. It'll even tell you where that is or direct you in some way to that location.
Yeah, so we have, let's just back up and talk about one of our big partners, the SCCA. They have this 2 flagship events each year. One is called the Solo Nationals, which is the Super Bowl of autocross. And the other is their championship runoffs, which is the Super Bowl of amateur road racing. And for those 2 events over the last couple of years, we've built some map-based parking apps so that you can visually pick a parking spot for your paddock space. You can visually find other people. So for example, if I want to find where Jeff, you're parked, I can look you up and find out how to get to you. And then you can also see things like the where the tech and scrutineering is. You can see where the bathrooms are located, where the concessions are, things like that. So it's not a generally available feature yet, but for sure, I'll just think about one of my own experiences going to a new racetrack in the past few years is when I went to Spa, actually in Belgium. And I've been to many racetracks, but every racetrack is different. And so when you go to a new facility, the last thing you want to do is waste time like walking around the paddock looking for a bathroom or looking for registration or looking for whatever, right? So there's all kinds of opportunities for us, some of them very simple, to just streamline event day. Because again, you're only there for two reasons. Like everything else is really red tape. If it's not seeing your friends or people you like to hang out with, and it's not doing the thing you're there to participate, whether that be hands on wheel or volunteer or officiate or something like that, everything else is a waste of time, right? So if we can cut that stuff out, that means that people are more likely to keep coming back and keep having fun with their cars.
And you're so right. Like even just going to the track that I know, like understanding how much time I have between the next session, the next race, like where I need to be behind the wheel, or like do I have time to reach the bathroom, can be critical, right? Or like you said, going to a new place and finding out the new locations, like that's huge. That is such a great piece.
One thing that we see that I sit right seat and instruct at track day sometimes. And one of the things that you see with first timers in particular is like as adults, we don't want to look foolish, right? Like we have anxiety about looking at a place or looking like a novice. And I remember once coaching at Sears Point, and a gentleman showed up and he had a Ford GT40, one of the new ones. This is about 15 years ago. And he's a silver-haired older guy, obviously an executive. We live near the Silicon Valley, so probably somehow in technology. And I'm like kind of a young kid, and I'm going to get in the car in the right-hand seat. And first, I get to drive the first two laps to point out the corner workers and everything. That's how the BMW club did it where I am. And then I get in the right-hand seat, and I basically boss him around, right, to keep both of us safe. That's like pretty tough. I mean, that's a pretty tough pill to swallow if you're accustomed to, for example, being a CEO of a large multinational company, which is what this gentleman was. And so I think about like, let's peel that down to the base layer. Nobody wants to look foolish, right? And so if we can streamline and reduce that, which is things like knowing where to be and when to be and what you need to have when you show up so that you're prepared, like very simple things like that, I think both make the barrier to getting involved lower, which is great for first timers. And then it just makes them have a better experience. And like, why go to all this work to put on these events if we don't want people to have a great experience? So I think it works both ways and both are important.
And that's kind of a counterpoint because if you have an event, like you said, Brian, going on and you want more and more people to be invited and to participate and feel welcome, just making it easy for them to understand where they have to go. So like you said, as adults, we don't like to feel embarrassed by being a newbie, right? We want to know exactly where we're going. It's like, hey, if you might not know where you're going, having any kind of almost like the tool like Motorsport Reg and the ancillary products to peel back those layers of that onion to be like, hey, here's what's going on. Here's where everything you need to know is. Here's how to make yourself not look like a newbie. You will make so many more people want to join your group, and you'll see a larger amount of people participate because it is that barrier to entry is so much lower in that case.
And that's the stuff that Jeff is referring to that he's seen is some like future product that we're working on. And there's a lot of opportunities for us to do things like that, just to make the experience a little bit easier, a little bit faster, a little bit more streamlined. If you've ever been to a fancy restaurant twice, the first time they don't know anything about you, right? But if they're a good restaurant, the second time you come back, they'll greet you by name. They'll be able to surface something about your previous visit. They'll ask you if you want that same bottle of wine again, right? I mean, that hospitality is the way to people's hearts. And the way that I look at it is it's not so much about the wallet, the share of wallet or the money, but it's really about the prioritization. So I think the challenge, if I can just like wax poetic about motorsports for a moment, the challenge that we in motorsports and just cars in general have is that there's so many things we can be doing with our time. I mentioned like you've got work obligations, you have kids sports, which is a whole industry now, right? If you go on Facebook, you are bombarded with things you could be doing with your leisure time and dollars. And so for those of us who love cars or bikes or go-karts, and we want more people to play with, the way that I think about it is it's not really that like one car club is fighting for another car club for attendance. Like we're sort of fighting over crumbs of one slice of the pie.
Right.
Because in the United States alone, there are 220 million licensed motorists.
Oh, wow.
As I mentioned, we had about 365,000 registrations last year. So clearly, there's a lot more people who are not yet with a foot in the door in a performance driving or a motorsport type event or volunteering in some way than there are people who are currently doing it. So I always think like our goal here is to make the experience so much fun. I mean, we already have a wonderful product in the sense of the sounds, the smells, the sights, the acceleration, the feel, et cetera, right? If we can just make all the stuff that goes around it, which is the logistics and the red tape and the requirements, we can make that stuff easy. It's a home run. It's really a home run.
Right. And like you said, the whole idea, the whole umbrella of the Motorsport Reg product is to try to make it easy for everyone to either organize, get engaged, find out where they're going, and make it accessible to, like you said, you don't have to be an F1 person. You don't have to come from hundreds of millions of dollars because as we all know, the saying is, how do you become a millionaire in racing? You start as a billionaire, right? You don't have to be that way with Motorsport Reg. If you utilize the things that are staring you in the face, that are available to you, Motorsport Reg, Race Hero, all of these great products, it becomes, that barrier of entry becomes almost obsolete. It's just the limit to your imagination about what you want to participate, whether it is teen driving, whether it's an autocross, whether it be just you as an adult, you can go take a teen driving performance class, right? Just to learn more about how your car or how you perform in those difficult situations, right? So there are so many great things. And then there is the club activations, there's the racing schools, there's tracks. I mean, I get a almost bi-weekly email from Motorsport Reg saying, you've asked, and I've asked for this. This isn't something that they do. So I preface this like they will not inundate your inbox. I asked for my inbox to be inundated. I said, in 300 miles, what's going on? I want to know what's going on because I'm such an interested party in getting into motorsport. I just want to know everything. Right? You don't have to have it that crazy. You can do 100 miles. You can do, I just want to know about autocross. So you guys have created such an amazing product to isolate and bring down the barrier of entry for a lot of these types of events. And that's amazing. I can't believe you guys have done it. I first, kudos. Congratulations. And what's next?
Well, thank you. I still look at this really through the lens of how I looked through it 20 years ago almost, which is I almost couldn't believe that it was possible that some guy with a car, me, could like go drive it on the racetrack. And then once I did it, I couldn't realize that I didn't know about it before because of how fun it was. And, today I have to warn people, if you're not yet involved, it can be a slippery slope toward, trailers and race cars and shifter carts and all kinds of fun stuff.
I'm already trying to figure out how I can afford the next race car. So,
well, I'll tell you, rule number one, buy a used race car. That's the best. The best race car is a used race car because somebody else paid for all the upfront work. But I guess I just go back to, in terms of what's next, like I think we just keep doing the things that we're already doing, really. Of course, technology changes. When we first started this business, there were no iPhones. So obviously there's things like that fundamentally change the world, right? And I think if there are some truisms for the world ahead, like we will only have more devices, we'll only be more mobile, we'll only expect more from our sort of second screens. And I think that has a lot to do with how we enjoy and consume these events that we're at. Because one of the things you see in like large scale spectator events now is that you don't go to the event for like just the event. There's almost always like 10 different things going on so that you're always got your attention captured or can always be engaged. Because if there's big quiet times in between the main events, like people get bored and they want to leave. So I think we can look at that and say, how do we just make these events a little bit more entertaining, a little bit more fun, a little bit more, it's kind of just like a little bit. And I think that constant iteration is how we get to what we're trying to do as Hagerty, which is safe driving. Like we need to find a way to get more people involved in this sport and get more involved with their hands on the wheel, because those people become evangelists for the rest of the world who is not yet clued in to how much fun you can have with your car.
And just to reiterate, like I know, there's a lot of great things coming up, but it's not just racetracks. Like we mentioned this previously, and we talked about this in like our pre-podcast stuff, is that it's not just racing and it's not just racetracks. This whole avenue, this tool of Motorsport Reg that you guys created, which is a phenomenal tool, is to get people out enjoying the drive, right? Whether that be a cruise, whether that be a picnic, whether that be, going out to like a movie. I've seen people who are like, hey, we're cruising, we're going to do this, and then we're going to end up at a drive-in movie theater on Motorsport Reg, right? So it's not just the motorsport. It's also how do we get out and have a platform so we can track the participants, we can reach out to them, we can notify them when things are happening, and like we know how many people are interested, right? So there's such a great swath of things that the Motorsport Reg product can be used for, and all it takes is for any of the listeners or any of the clubs that may pay attention to this stuff to get out and just try it. Just get out and try, put something on there, and I'm sure you will be surprised. But I know
that's one thing. If I can say one thing, Matt, if you are a club organizer or you work at a racetrack or a governing body, one of the things that our team does behind the scenes is they have this concierge onboarding process, so that if you're not a technology person, even, if you don't think you have good computer skills, our team does all the heavy lifting to bring you up to speed, to get you running. We set you up with your forms, and then really you just start seeing registrations roll in. We train you on how to send emails, how to run reports, how to process payments, things like that. So I think sometimes we hear customers who are a little bit intimidated by using a software tool. They like the familiarity of using paper or something along those lines. Well, we have people who are teenagers using the software, not probably a surprise, but we also have people who are in like their 80s who are running these events and using their software, using our software. So it really does scale to kind of all people from all backgrounds.
Yeah, that's crazy that how easy you guys make it. So kudos to you guys.
So Brian, just kind of a personal question for you. As a living, breathing example of what Motorsport Reg can create, tell us a little bit about some of the motorsport opportunities that you've had, your career, and then what's the most important lesson you'd say you've learned through your time doing that type of stuff? Most
important lesson, like driving or behind the wheel, or
yeah.
Don't hit the wall. That's my most important lesson.
Well, yeah. I have had the opportunity to hit the wall when I was a passenger, not a driver. Not my car. So actually, it was a great learning experience.
You came away with that. You came away with that in the best position possible, other than like potentially some injuries.
Well, so let me just segue for 1 second. I'll tell that story. We were at Buttonwillow, which is a track in Southern California. It's in the desert. It's like a super fun site. So they always joke that if you drive off track in the night, your car will glow because of all the dust is radioactive. But we're at this, it's a bachelor party. Actually, someone rented the track for a bachelor party. And I get in the car with a friend of mine. I'm riding shotgun. It's a full race car. So race seats on both driver's side and passenger side. We are both wearing Hans devices, which is the head and neck restraint that protects your head from what happened to Dale Earnhardt, for example, Dale Earnhardt Sr.
We talked about that on our holiday special. Go buy your loved one. If they're interested in motorsport, go get them a Hans device.
Yes, a wonderful investment if you like your head being attached.
If you don't like them, don't. But If you do, definitely buy a Hans device.
Buy them an entry to some supercar that has 1,000 horsepower and no Hans device. We're going around the track and we're coming on to the front straight, and there's only one wall at Buttonwillow, which separates the pit lane from the front straight. So good news about that track, there's not a lot to hit. Bad news in this particular instance is we're about to take the last turn coming onto the front straight. And I think we're on lap 3 maybe. So we're just kind of getting warmed up. And I've done a lot of right seat instructing. So when I'm riding with somebody, like even if I'm not coaching them, I am still watching, just out of preservation instinct, if nothing else. And my buddy turns in a little bit early, which, small mistake. That's correctable. He then gets on the gas pretty aggressively. All right. Small, debatable decision, but also correctable, not the end of the world. And as background, like I've raced a lot of Spec Miata, and in Spec Miata, you're in the dirt as much as you're on the racetrack. So to me, if we're going to drop wheels, put our wheels in the dirt at the exit of the racetrack, like that does not scare me, because as long as you do the right things with your hands and your feet, it's not a big deal. So we turn a little early. We're on the gas a little early. I'm kind of like looking out the side of my eye. And we do indeed drop wheels at the exit. And this is a experienced racer who I've driven with a bunch of times, so should not be a big deal. Well, Buttonwillow is a racetrack that could be configured like 21 different ways. And so they have an east loop, a west loop, and then a variety of different loops that they can connect. And so all over the place, they have these short connector roads that are not where you want to go. They're where you could go if the track was set up in a different orientation. Well, not too far in front of us, there's a connector road that veers left, and we want to go straight down the front straight. And on that connector road in the middle is a small orange cone marking that this connector road is closed and that you should instead go straight ahead. And my friend sees this, and ever so slightly, he puts about 2 degrees of steering lock into the wheel to try to avoid hitting that cone with the front of his car because he doesn't want to, damage the splitter. But what happens? We have 2 wheels in the dirt, 2 wheels on the pavement. The car instantly brakes sideways, and he goes 2 feet in, so foot on the clutch, foot on the brake, locks up the tires, and we slide towards the inside wall of the racetrack. And it's pretty obvious that we're going to hit. And we're going, I'm going to guess that coming onto the front straight, you're doing 75-ish or so, 75 miles an hour. It's like a fast third gear turn. So we're going towards the wall. And I'm in the passenger seat, so I can literally do nothing about this. And I kind of do, if you've ever seen like World Rally Championship on TV, when these guys have these massive shunts out in the forest when they're rally racing, you'll see them ball up into a little ball. Like they'll tuck their hands in like under their chin, they'll lift their legs up towards their stomach, and they're just like bracing for impact, basically. So we go into the wall basically head on. The data system showed about 55 miles an hour, and the back end of the car came off the ground. We hit so hard, and then like came down. And we were both wearing Hans devices, so fantastic opportunity to test
Great
that out.
investment.
Absolutely. I saw stars for like a split second. Like I saw the stars kind of like go in my eyes, and then I kind of was like, okay, we're good. I'm like, turn off the car. Are you okay? Like, kind of got everything under control, and, car was totaled, but both of us were fine. Well, here's the takeaway from this. So you asked about the biggest lesson learned, Jeff. I had been racing for a few years before that, but I was timid in the race car because I was afraid of crashing. Quick side story. The second day I drove my car to high school when I was a 16-year-old, I got popped for doing a 48 and a 25 in a residential neighborhood. And this was, all kidding aside, literally, I came over the hill, I saw the cop, he put down his donut, picked up the radar gun, and then gunned me. And I'd already slammed on the brakes and was still doing 48. So I had done some naughty things as a teen, right?
Which we all have. It's nothing against you, Brian. We all have, right?
I think. And I think to your point, Matt, that's why we take to the track now.
Right,
like we recognize
it's safer there. It's safer
Absolutely.
there.
Absolutely. So being timid as a racer, like I had been able to get into the top 10 in Spec Miata in our area here where we had a lot of cars. We'd have 50 and 60 car grids. So I thought I was doing pretty decent. But after I had that crash, and I realized how good the safety equipment was, how safe it was to be on the racetrack, how you could go into the wall at 55 miles an hour and basically you do some damage to your checkbook, right? Like the car would get hurt, but then I as a person would walk away and go see my family, go back to work the next day, all those things. I became a much faster racer.
I mean, it's really true, right? You lose a little bit of that worry, right? It's done. The worst is over, so to speak. There's always worse, but like that fear that you have of the wall and of getting near the wall or potentially going off, like you lose that and you become even better, right? You evolved from it, and anyone can do that without hitting the wall, without impacting your checkbook, right?
I mean, I always recommend that you build up to the limits, right? Like that is the best way to go, whether you're driving on the autocross course or on a racetrack somewhere. But I think like in terms of lessons learned, people would always ask me like, don't you get scared? Isn't it dangerous? And I think this goes back to what we were discussing earlier, which is all the traffic is going the same direction. Everyone has the same expectations and the same rules. There's an ambulance at the track all the time in case something does go wrong. And, another plug for Haggerty, if you're doing a track day and you are worried about the impact on your checkbook, if you were to spin or if you were going to go off track and hurt your car in some way, we have a HPD insurance program that actually protects your car. But at a racetrack scenario, oh man, the safety equipment is just so good. Like it is really the safest place to drive a car. So I can't recommend that enough as far as not just fun, but also a safe way to go.
Jeff, I know you're leaving here in a second. Any final for you closing questions? Because I have a couple more for Brian. We don't need to go much longer than that, but any closing questions for Brian, Jeff?
Not really. I mean, I'm very excited for everything that's coming out. I'm excited for 2021 and to get more involved with Motorsport Reg. I've already discovered events I didn't know about, and so I'm sure that'll grow and then some. So, but Brian, yeah, we appreciate you coming on. Thanks for taking the time.
For sure. And Jeff, I think, you, Matt, and I will have to get together at a track somewhere in 2021, and we'll sort of put our money where our mouth is, like get out there and have some fun behind the wheel.
Definitely find out who is quicker. I just found one of our cohorts, and Jeff, if you got to go, I understand. One of our cohorts, Cece, who is in charge of our actual motorsports program for commercial, posted a bunch of pictures of me in a simulator at the PRI, and I remember running some pretty hot laps, and Jeff was going, "Those are pretty good times, Matt." And I was like, "I'm hungover as crap right now." So I can't wait for us to actually get on a HPD, like an actual track day, to see how well we do. But speaking of actual experiences, Brian, you talked a little bit about it with us pre-podcast, but I want to talk about it. You mentioned that you went to Spa. You mentioned that you went to Nürburgring. You've got some really great things happening, or like, at least you have some history with Nürburgring. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
I have always been fascinated by the Nürburgring ever since I got involved in track driving. And I think the reason why is because of the challenge. So for me, when I first started racing, I moved eventually to Spec Miata because I wanted to know how good of a driver I was. And so I want to have lots of people in a very similar car that I had a benchmark against. And I guess, as a kid, I used to get super competitive with my brother over mini golf. Like if he would cheat, I would go crazy on him, right? Like it's gotta be a fair fight. So when I look at the Nürburgring, I kind of look at this as the ultimate challenge, right? If you're gonna climb mountains, you're climbing Everest. If you're gonna dive, you're gonna go to the bottom of the Mariana Trench. If you're the movie producer, right, that's doing the exploration down there. If you're gonna go do something, like you're gonna go all the way. And I think of the Nürburgring as sort of mecca for motorsport enthusiasts because of the complexity and the challenge, and honestly, kind of the danger. I don't want to say the danger, but the risk.
Yeah.
If you're listening and you're not familiar with this track, it is technically a public road in Germany. Depending on how you count, it has somewhere between 80 and 130 turns. It is 22 kilometers long, I think, so about 14 miles.
Yeah, about 14 miles.
Yep. And so you can imagine, and it goes through the forest, so you can't really see very far anywhere because there's tall trees lining the track.
The elevation changes alone are fun, like crazy. The types of elevation changes that you see. So even if you could see far ahead, there's probably a hill in between you and that vision. So
hundreds of meters of total elevation change over the course of the track. And the Armco, the walls there, are never more than about 10 feet off the side of the track. So I wouldn't say it's dangerous per se, but there's a lot of risk to pushing there. And I personally like that. Like I want there to be a challenge. I don't want to be driving around a giant skid pad somewhere. And so I think, my personal love affair with the Nürburgring goes to that as sort of an expression of the maximum challenge you can have as a driver, whether you're a racing driver or just an enthusiast driver. I had the chance to go there and run maybe 6 laps, I think, on a tourist day. And the tourist day is where the track is open to anybody, from including school buses and motorcycles,
any cars, anything, all at the same time, which is what's crazy about it.
If you haven't seen it, search YouTube. You'll find some fun and entertaining clips. But I think like that's what kind of captivated my imagination about it. So I had a chance to go there, drive a few laps. It was everything I thought it would be. I've done some sim racing on iRacing since then to kind of build some more awareness there. And ultimately I hope to go back there and run. They have a very prestigious 24-hour race there, usually in the summertime. It's a fantastic event. It's got great German fans that party all night long, and there's fireworks going off. I mean, it's really a really incredible event. But I'm head over heels for that track and what it represents as far as a challenge goes for drivers.
I am curious. Who are the more emphatic fans of motorsport? Is it the Aussies, the Australians, or is it the Germans? Because Aussies will show up to the Bathurst like a week in advance and bury their beer because they're only allowed so much beer at the actual event. So I don't know who's better, German fans or Aussie fans. But you know what? You get to the heat of the issue, which is it's such a challenging track. It's such a mecca that there's a reason why we see automotive manufacturers tout their clout at the ring, right? And you hear things like Mercedes-Benz calling their beast the beast of the green hill because it's like hill, not hell, hill, because it is such a crazy track that if a car is performing well at a track as difficult and as challenging as that, on the road it's not even going to be challenged. And driver is the exact same. Like you talked earlier, it's like one turn can almost look like three other turns in your brain, and unless you are seasoned and unless you are it's memorization, but not just memorization. You have to have instantaneous knowledge of that track. And I do a lot of sim racing on that track for that exact reason, because I hope one day I will be able to get to the ring, and I probably will spin, or I will probably be very slow compared to my lap times in a racing sim. But at the same time, I just want to make sure, and I did this for my racing school at Sebring, is I want to have that visual image in my head that there's not that synapse lapse, right? I want the quickest route to my instantaneous memory, my short-term and my long-term memory, and it to be like, all right, this is turn 55 coming up. You know this turn. You've been on this turn 1,000 times. You know the intro, or you know the entry, you know the angle, and you know the exit after the apex. Will that happen? Probably not. I'll probably get on it and just be a big hoonigan. But at the same time, it's such an amazing track. So I'm very envious of you for going to not only Spa, but the Nürburgring. And you also have a website devoted to it?
Yeah, so one thing people don't know is that Spa and the Nürburgring are only about 90 minutes apart from each other. So if you go to Belgium for Spa or to Germany for the Nürburgring, it is very easy to just hop in your car and drive over to the other track. And so that's what I did. I drove the Spa on the first day, and then I drove overnight to the Nürburgring and did that the second day. Because it's a very complicated racetrack, it's not like you just show up and you go do a 24-hour sports car race there, because you would not want someone whose first event is like driving around in the middle of the night, probably in the rain, while you got GT3 cars zooming around them, et cetera, right? So there's actually a separate licensing procedure to be able to race at the Nürburgring.
Oh, wow.
So in North America, in the US at least, we have like the SCCA is a large sanctioning body. And so you can get an SCCA race license. Well, everywhere except the United States, there is the FIA. And so if you watch like Formula One,
right,
the FIA is the group that sanctions international motorsport. And so if you as an American want to go abroad and race, there's actually a licensing process for an international license, and then specialized licensing requirements at the Nürburgring, so that you can build up enough track experience to be able to participate safely. So as I was looking at what would it actually take to go over there and do this race, like do a 2-hour race or go all the way up and try to do the 24-hour race, I put together an ebook. It's 42 pages. It's at a website called NürburgringInsider.com. And basically it tells you if you're a Canadian or an American, a North American, and you want to go to the Nürburgring, whether you want to just drive around and spectate, whether you want to do one of these tourist days where you can drive a rental car at pretty slow speeds, if you want to do a performance track day where the track is actually closed and like there's only a few cars, if you want to start racing, or if you want to go all the way to that 24 hours of the Nürburgring level, this book details like what you need to know, how you get there, who you got to talk to. And then for those racing events specifically, it talks about how to get your international race license and what they call the DPN, which is the Nürburgring permit. So the website's NürburgringInsider.com. And again, if you don't know anything about the Nürburgring, like you should just go grab this ebook, because it's got awesome photos in it that will be totally awesome to look at.
I've seen a little bit of it just in talking with you, and it's fantastic. And I have to say, based on what I've read, of on your website and everything is that you, Jeff, and I, as your the three ringers, need to go do a 24-hour at Nürburgring. But Brian, I want to just say thank you so much for joining us. We're about out of time on our podcast, so is there any other place that people can find you, whether it be Instagram, whether it be Motorsport Reg, whether it be at Haggerty? Is there anything else you'd like to let our listeners know?
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate the opportunity to come on and chat with the Midwest folks. We have tons of customers and tons of enthusiasts who love to go to, whether it's the autocross course or fun racetracks like Road America and Mid-Ohio, two places that I've been lucky enough to race at. They're awesome facilities. For me, you can find me on Twitter at just Ghidinelli, which is my last name. I'm not a super huge social person. I'm mostly cranking away to try to make it easier to organize and attend motorsport events, but I love connecting with folks at tracks. And so I try to, if you subscribe to our newsletter on the Motorsport Reg homepage, or you follow me on social, I usually talk about when I'm going to be on the road and traveling somewhere. And we have little meetups and customer get-togethers. And so if I can buy you a Coke or a beer sometime when we're out on the road in the same place at the same time, would love to connect with fellow enthusiasts.
Brian, thanks so much for joining us. We got to get you out to Mid-Ohio. We got to get you, Jeff, and me at Mid-Ohio doing some track day stuff. I think that'd be fantastic. Folks, this has been the Midwest Motoring Podcast. We've been joined by Brian Ghidinelli of Motorsport Reg and of Haggerty. And, I mean, it's been fantastic. So thank you so much for joining us. We just want to make sure that everyone knows, go to Motorsport Reg, find the next track day, find the next driving event, find the next anything automotive on that website, and go out and register for it, because there are a lot of great things on that website. If you are doing a track day and it is HPDE, Haggerty has track day insurance. We can provide you with the insurance to cover that vehicle. So if you are worried about that checkbook, maybe it will be a little bit less of a hit on that checkbook. Say you make that same mistake that Brian's buddy did. But Brian, again, thank you so much. There are so many other things we want to talk about, so we're going to have you on again, and maybe not talk about Motorsport Reg as much, but more about you, because there's so much more about motorsports that there's a reason why grassroots sounds like motorsport, right? There's a reason why that simple statement brings to mind just people getting out and enjoying cars and going fast in a safer way than on the street. And so I think there's a lot more to talk about. So thank you so much for joining us, folks. This has been the Midwest Motoring Podcast, sponsored by Haggerty. Stay safe, stay healthy, and as always, keep driving.